Hello everybody, it's your favorite historian, Dr. Catel. Welcome to another episode of Basic Nigerian History. Last episode, we discussed how Obasanjo tried to improve Nigeria's international image by focusing on bringing in foreign investments and paying off external debts, but that meant he also ignored all of the internal issues the country had, such as poor infrastructure, education, health, and most importantly of all, corruption. This episode, we're going to look at how his administration actually just continued corruption instead of putting an end to it like he promised. Okay, so let's pick up where we left off. By 2006, EFCC, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, had recovered more than $5 billion in stolen funds and successfully prosecuted over 80 people. During that year, another 4 state governors were impeached over allegations of corruption and gross misconduct. Rashidi Adewolu Ladoja of Oyo State, Ayo Fayosi of Ekiti State, Joshua Daviye of Plateau State, Peter Obi of Anambra State. By 2007, the EFCC, the federal anti-corruption body, and other state legislators had brought charges against many powerful politicians in an effort to crack down on corruption in the lead up to the elections. These positive steps were all smoke and mirrors, however. It was all kind of fake. This is because the allegations leveled at the politicians were selective. Many people argued because of the timing that Obasanjo was the corrupt one and that he was simply using these impeachments as a tool to go after and weaken his political opponents before the upcoming elections. Obasanjo argued that politicians were simply attempting to divert attention away from their own corrupt dealings by making up these lies. It would have been much easier to believe him if he didn't then start a movement to allow him to run for a 3rd term. A bill was introduced to change the law just for this purpose. However, Atiku Abubakr, who was the leading contender to succeed Obasanjo, led the opposition to this bill, and it was thrown out in May by the Senate. This inevitably caused beef between Obasanjo and Abubakr. When I say beef, I mean bad blood. Like they now had problems with each other, whereas just a few years ago, they were partners, with Atiku being vice president and Obasanjo being president. Remember in the previous episode, I mentioned that Obasanjo was accused of using EFCC as a tool against his vice president, Atiku, in 2007. Well, this is why. Atiku Abubakr and the Nigerian Senate opposed Obasanjo getting his 3rd term as president. And shortly after, Atiku was charged with graft as well as misappropriation of $125 million in government funds. Let's pause here for a minute. I don't really understand what's wrong with these African leaders. They get into power knowing full well, swearing to only be there for a short period. Yet, it seems like after they get a taste of power, they all get power drunk and always attempt to do a madness. Whether they are politicians or military people, they always try to overstay their welcome. Like why? Anyways, Abubakar denied the charges that were leveled against him and in turn accused Obasanjo of graft too and of using the EFCC as a tool against him. By the way, just in case you're wondering, graft is when a politician uses his political power for personal gain, like keeping money meant for a project to yourself. Atiku then defected from PDP party and joined the Action Congress, an opposition party based in Lagos. Many people believe that the charge was politically motivated, perfectly timed to stop Atiku running for president on the PDP ticket. Abubakar took EFCC and INEC to court over their attempts to bar him from running for president and to remove him from office as vice president. He won at court, as did other governors that had been impeached. The court's decision to overturn and nullify impeachments and allegations made by the Obasanjo administration contributed to the feeling that the accusations had been politically motivated and that Obasanjo's administration was in fact equally as corrupt as the politicians charged. It doesn't matter if the politicians were in fact guilty because the courts had clearly decided that actions of the accusers were equally illegal. In February of that year, despite the defeat at the court, EFCC released a list of 135 candidates it deemed unfit to hold public office because of corruption. Accusations of corruption were now simply reduced to a political tool. and no longer something to be taken seriously. On the 13th of April 2007, some apparently random people, notice I'm saying random in quotes, killed religious and highly influential leader Ustaz Jafar Adam and his disciple. Obasanjo warned that he would not tolerate violence leading up to the upcoming elections and would sincerely deal with any highly placed individuals that advocated for it. The leaders of Obasanjo's party, PDP, handpicked Umaru Yar'Adua to run as the next candidate. He was a little-known governor from Katsina with a reputation as an upright and fair-dealing person. He ran against Abubakar of Lagos-based AC and Muhammad Buhari of the All Nigerian People's Party. By this time, Buhari was now a civilian and no longer a general in the army. Between April 14 and 21, there were over 50 vote-related deaths, which is actually quite low by Nigerian standards, but still 50 people died. PDP thugs would either force voters to vote for PDP or stand at voting stations scaring away voters and simply voting themselves for PDP. Polling stations opened very late or not at all. There were sometimes very little to no ballot papers, and ballot theft was common. The irregularities were so widespread that various independent observers declared them seriously flawed, including the EU, Commonwealth Monitoring Group, and the US-based International Republican Institute. PDP won 70% of the votes cast, which obviously didn't really happen, and handed power over to itself. Obasanjo used corruption to secure Umaru Yar'Adua's position, the very thing he had promised to eradicate. And let's leave it there for today. This is the part where I would usually take the opportunity to recap what we learned in this episode, but this time I will recap Obasanjo's 8-year term in the office and try to summarize what we learned over the past 3 episodes. What did Obasanjo achieve in his 2 terms of presidency? First of all, it was the longest period of political rule at that point in time, even though he did so through political manipulations. At least there were no more coups. He also paid off a lot of Nigeria's debts. He improved Nigeria's standing in the international community to being once again a leader in Africa. He slowed the decline of the economy, so we still decline, but not as much. Naira continues to decline, but at a slower rate, and the inflation rates also improved. What remained the same during Obasanjo's reign? Let's talk about that. The standards of living remained the same, meaning it remained rubbish. There was no improvement for the average Nigerian. Poverty remained the same. Social ills like ethnic and religious tension remained, maybe even worsened. He didn't do much to address it at all. The political situation in the Niger Delta got worse. It degenerated into chaos, became destructive and violent, as the people there continued to fight against the degradation of their lands and for better ways of living. As usual guys, the bibliography is in the description below. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share it with your friend. We are also launching our very own new platform called Africa Story, where we teach you guys and provide edutainment content based on Africa. Go and check it out. Subscribe to support us because it is time we take charge of our own story. Thank you.